I was sitting at the dining table doing my math homework when the knock came. Not the soft kind, not the kind a friend makes when they stop by to play. This was loud, heavy, repeated, the kind that makes the air inside a house feel different before you even open the door. My nanny, Mrs. Pauline, froze near the kitchen doorway. Her hands went still. She looked at me for 1 second too long before walking to the door. 2 police officers stood outside. One of them was already holding his hat in his hands, pressing it to his chest. I didn't know then that people only do that when they're about to say something that can never be unsaid. The other officer spoke first. "There's been an accident." He said the words slowly, carefully, like he was placing them down one at a time. And then I heard it. Plane crash. No survivors. My pencil rolled off the table and hit the floor. I didn't pick it up. I just sat there, completely still, waiting for my parents to walk through the door behind those officers. They didn't. The house felt different by morning. Too big, too quiet. My mother's perfume still drifted from her cardigan hanging near the stairs. My father's office light had been left on, casting a yellow glow under the door. Their bedroom was closed exactly as they had left it, like they were just away for the night, but they weren't coming back. Relatives arrived first, then lawyers in dark suits carrying briefcases, then serious-looking men I didn't recognize, speaking in low voices with their hands clasped behind their backs. Nobody hugged me for long. People kept patting my shoulder and moving on to the next room. That evening, I heard raised voices coming from my father's study. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. My Uncle Raymond's voice cut through clearly. "The company cannot be run by a child." There were murmurs of agreement, then silence, then his voice again, calmer, smoother. "I'll step in as CEO. For stability. It's what Marcus would have wanted." I pulled away from the door. Something about the way he said it didn't sit right with me. He hadn't sounded sad. He'd sounded ready. "I need to take you back one day before everything broke." My father, Marcus Holtz, was moving fast that morning, the way he always did when he had somewhere important to be. He was flying to an international business summit in Vienna. My mother, Anne, had decided to join at the last minute. She always said they were partners in everything. I had begged them not to go. Not because I was scared, because my school presentation was the next afternoon and I'd been practicing for 2 weeks. My father knelt down in front of me, both hands on my shoulders, and looked me straight in the eye. "We'll make it up to you," he said quietly. "You're our future, Jake. Everything we build for you." My mother kissed my forehead. Then they were gone. I practiced my presentation alone that evening while Mrs. Pauline made spaghetti. Now I stood at their funeral in a black suit that felt too stiff, watching my Uncle Raymond shake hands with investors at the edge of the gathering. He wasn't crying. He was smiling. Not a big smile, just the small, careful kind that says a person is exactly where they planned to be. Uncle Raymond became my legal guardian within 2 weeks. I moved into his house temporarily, which was what everyone kept saying. The first week felt almost normal. He was polite. His wife Donna made warm food. But the second week changed. My school fees were suddenly too expensive. Raymond sat me down with a grave look and said, "Jake, the business isn't doing well. Your father left behind some debt. We have to be responsible." He pulled me from Westfield Academy and enrolled me in a school across town. My weekly allowance disappeared. My parents' cars, both of them, were sold within the month. I started searching the internet at night on my phone, reading every news article I could find about Holt Industries. Every headline said the same thing: record profits, strong growth, Raymond's face smiling in photographs beside industry leaders. I printed an article and held it for a long time. Then I looked at the room I was sleeping in, a guest room with one window that faced a wall. That same week, Raymond moved all of his belongings into my parents' master bedroom. My new school was called Greenfield Middle. The hallways were narrow and the windows were always foggy. Kids whispered about me the first week. I overheard the words "rich orphan" twice before Friday. I said nothing. At Raymond's house, things kept shrinking. My portions at dinner grew smaller. His children, my cousins Tara and Blake, got new shoes and weekend trips, while I wore the same pair of sneakers for 3 months. One evening, I heard Donna complaining on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice carried through the thin wall. "We're paying too much for him. He eats, he takes up space. Raymond needs to figure this out." I sat on my bed that night and looked at the ceiling. Outside, every main road in the city had a Holt Industries billboard on it. My father's company, my name, everywhere, except where I was. The next morning, I was helping move storage boxes to the garage when I saw them, stacked against the far wall, boxes labeled with my father's name, and on the side of each one in red marker, 2 words, "To shred." I worked quickly and quietly. Raymond was at the office and Donna had gone shopping. Mrs. Pauline was in the kitchen. I told her I was just cleaning up the garage. I opened the first box, then the second. Most of it was old reports and printed emails, but in the third box, inside a plain brown folder labeled Estate Planning, I found it. A thick document with formal headings and my father's signature at the bottom. I didn't understand most of the words. Legal language is its own maze, but I read slowly, and near the middle of the third page, one sentence was perfectly clear. It read, "Upon reaching 18 years of age, my son, Jacob, assumes controlling interest in Holt Industries and all associated holdings." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, tucked it inside my school binder, and walked casually back into the house. That night, I slid the copy under my mattress and lay on top of it. I heard the front door open. Raymond's footsteps crossed the hallway, then the garage door. I stared at the ceiling without breathing until his footsteps moved away. I said nothing about the will, not one word. That was the hardest decision I had ever made at 11 years old, but something deep and quiet inside me said, "Not yet." So instead, I watched. I listened at dinner when Raymond's associates came over and talked business. I visited the public library after school and read every financial article I could find. I started a notebook, plain blue cover, nothing on the outside, and I filled it with questions and answers, terms and definitions, compound interest, shareholder equity, board voting rights. Raymond, meanwhile, was thriving. A new watch every few months, a vacation to Portugal, a private car upgrade. My shoes had holes near the left toe. I stuffed tissue inside and kept walking. One evening, I was clearing the table after dinner when I caught fragments of Raymond's phone call from the hallway. His voice was casual, low. "We move the shares into the holding company before the year ends. Clean, no trace back to the estate. By the time the boy is 18 years old to ask questions, there won't be anything to ask about." I found the name of the family lawyer inside the will documents. His name was Mr. Aldous Crane. It took me 2 weeks to reach him. I called from a payphone near the library, using coins I had saved from lunch. He picked up on the 3rd ring. When I told him who I was, there was a long silence. Then he said, "Jacob, I've been hoping you'd call." He was careful. He told me to meet him at a coffee shop 2 towns over on a Saturday when Raymond thought I was at a school project. We sat in a corner booth. He looked older than I expected. He spoke slowly and honestly. "The will is valid," he said, "but there are conditions tied to timing. If Raymond restructures the shares before your 18th birthday, control could legally shift away from you." He slid a notepad toward me. "The clock matters." He circled a date. My 18th birthday was 7 years away. When I walked out of that coffee shop, the afternoon felt sharp and cold. I had 7 years to prepare, and Raymond was already moving pieces on the board. 2 years later, at 15, I made a mistake. I was tired of watching. Tired of eating small portions while Raymond talked about company losses at dinner. One evening after school, I walked into his office, stood in front of his desk, and said it clearly, "I know about the will." Raymond leaned back in his chair. He looked at me for a moment, then he laughed. Not a cruel laugh, a dismissive one. The kind that says you are not worth the energy of real anger. "You're a child," he said quietly. "You don't understand how business works." He stood and walked me out by the shoulder, gently, like I was young and confused. But that same night, my laptop disappeared from my room. The following day, the login I had been using to access company news was blocked. Raymond had someone change the home Wi-Fi password. I contacted Mr. Crane the next morning from a library computer. He responded in 3 words: document everything quietly. From that point, I kept a second notebook. Every conversation I remembered, every date, every number, written in plain language, hidden inside a school book no one would ever look twice at. At 16, I applied for a business mentorship program run by a group of city investors. I wrote my application essay about discipline and patience. I didn't mention my family name. I was accepted based on my own work. The program met every Saturday morning in a glass building downtown. There were 12 of us. We studied real companies, sat through mock board presentations, and were graded on our reasoning. One of the mentors, a quiet man named Mr. Foss, turned out to be a minor shareholder in Holt Industries. He didn't know who I was at first. I made sure to earn his respect before I ever let my last name come up naturally. When it did, he studied me for a long time. "Your father was an honest man," he said finally. Over the following months, Mr. Foss introduced me carefully to 2 other board members. I didn't ask for anything. I just showed up, asked smart questions, and let them see what I was becoming. Word moved quietly. One board member said it to another: "The sun is sharp." I was 17. My 18th birthday was 11 months away. That same week, I learned that a major board vote had been scheduled, the same week as my birthday. On the morning I turned 18, I didn't eat breakfast. I dressed in the one good suit I had bought secondhand and pressed the night before. Mr. Crane met me outside the Holt Industries building at 8 in the morning. He carried a leather briefcase. I carried my blue notebook. We walked into the building together. The receptionist looked at me like she was trying to place my face. I didn't help her. The boardroom was on the 14th floor. When we entered, Raymond was already seated at the head of the table. He looked up and his face went through 3 expressions in less than 2 seconds: surprise, calculation, composure. The meeting was called to order. Mr. Crane stood and presented the original will, notarized, witnessed, legally airtight. He read the relevant clause aloud in the quiet room. Every board member sat perfectly still. Raymond opened his mouth once, then closed it. Ownership transferred legally and immediately. The company was mine. I sat at the table and looked around the room slowly. Then I said 2 words: "Audit, please." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. The audit team worked for 3 weeks. They went through everything: executive bonuses, asset transfers, consulting fees paid to shell companies, travel expenses billed to the company. None of it was technically criminal, but all of it was ethically wrong. A pattern of quiet self-enrichment while the son of the founder lived on tissue-stuffed shoes in small portions. The board members read the report in silence. A few of them looked genuinely ashamed. Raymond sat at the end of the table and argued his case. "I kept this company profitable. I kept it alive. If not for me, there would be nothing for anyone to inherit." He wasn't entirely wrong. The company had grown under him, but it had grown crooked. I let him finish. Then I leaned forward and spoke calmly, clearly, the way Mr. Foss had once taught me, not with heat, but with weight. "You kept it profitable," I said, "but you didn't keep it honest. Those are not the same thing." The room stayed quiet. Every eye in that boardroom moved between us, and I understood in that moment that the real meeting had only just begun. I could have sued him. I had grounds. Mr. Crane laid them out clearly for me the evening after the audit. I could have pressed charges, called journalists, let the whole city watch Raymond get pulled apart in public. Part of me wanted to. That part remembered every dinner where I ate half a plate while he talked about financial sacrifice, every pair of worn shoes, every time he laughed at me like I was nothing. But I sat with that feeling long enough to understand it was pain, not wisdom. I removed Raymond as CEO. I placed him under a formal financial review. Every company privilege he had been using, the car, the expense account, and the office, was revoked immediately. He was required to repay all improperly withdrawn funds within 24 months. But I did not destroy him. No press conference, no public humiliation, no handcuffs. I told the board my decision and left the room. In the hallway, one of the younger employees was watching from near the elevator. She looked like she was trying to figure out who I was. I realized then that every person in that building was asking themselves the same question: what kind of leader would I be? My first act as CEO was to reinstate the employee scholarship fund my parents had built years ago and Raymond had quietly discontinued. The second was a full transparency policy. Every senior salary, every executive bonus, published internally for all staff to see. I cut my own starting salary to match the company average. People noticed. Morale shifted slowly, then steadily. The company's reputation, which had been quietly slipping, began to strengthen again. Raymond moved to a smaller city. He worked as an independent consultant. He wasn't in prison, he wasn't ruined, but the phone stopped ringing the way it used to. Invitations dried up. The industry circles that once welcomed him now kept a polite but firm distance. Not because I had called anyone or said anything, but because trust, once examined clearly, had simply evaporated. He had chosen a certain kind of life, and that life had chosen its consequences back. I thought about that sometimes late at night in the office my father once used, about how power works, about how long a reputation takes to build, and how quietly it can collapse under its own weight. And then a journalist asked to interview me. She was young, sharp, with a recorder in her hand and a direct look in her eyes. She asked me standard questions first: strategy, leadership, future plans. Then she leaned forward slightly and asked the one question everyone in the city had been waiting for. "Do you hate your uncle?" I thought about it for a real moment. Not for effect, I actually sat with the question. Then I answered honestly. For a long time, I thought winning meant getting even. I used to imagine the moment I could make him feel exactly what he made me feel. But hardship teaches you things if you let it. And what it taught me is that integrity outlasts control. Every time. I told her that Raymond had lost his position because I took it from him. He had lost it because of choices he made over 8 years. Choices that eventually stood in the light and spoke for themselves. I had simply been patient enough to still be standing when that happened. The article ran the following week. The headline called me calculated. I didn't mind. I had learned in a cold guest room with a borrowed library book that preparation looks like many things to people who aren't paying close attention, and I had been paying attention for a long time.
What are your thoughts? Drop your comments, like, and subscribe to this channel. Watch out for the next story.